Hello, hello, hey, hey, it's Jennifer Palmer, and you're listening to the Welly Walk podcast. So, today, I'm very excited about our conversation we're going to have today, and thank you for joining me again, as always. Today is a big thing, a pivotal thing, something that I've had simmering and wanting to tell you about, but I wasn't quite ready. And I think I am. I'm excited. I'm also a bit scared that I'm not going to be able to put it into the right words, but stay with me, and let's see what happens, because I think it'll be well worth it. For anyone new to the podcast, sorry, that was a little teaser there, but please go back to the very beginning, to the very first episode called The Catalyst, for a reason. You will understand why this season has all been a chronological story, a retelling of my midlife crisis and free fall before your very eyes, and how I've been navigating it so as not to hit the rocks, or maybe I've hit a couple rocks, but I've been able to right the ship, and the things that I've been learning that are helping me along the way, so that hopefully I don't have to repeat this crisis. That's really the crux of today's episode. How not to repeat a midlife crisis, how not to fail this crisis and have to repeat the grade. So, for those of you who are coming back, thank you for joining me. It is so beautiful out today. It is so sunny. I am excited. It's March. It's been almost a year since I started this podcast, and I kind of think this episode is the reason I started this podcast, the stuff that I've learned that we're going to talk about here. We've been on a bit of a sabbatical, a 3-part sabbatical into sleep science, which I hope you listened to. I kind of realized in preparing this episode that I had to go on that sabbatical partially because I wasn't ready for this episode and I needed more time to think on it and get all of my ducks in a row, but also because the sleep is so important and figures into what we're going to talk about today. It's actually part of this important, pivotal thing that we're going to discuss. So I hope you listened to that 3-part series on sleep and shared it with whoever you think could use it, because it is fundamental. It is so important. It gives us so much. We're going to talk more about that and how it figures in. But all this said, without further ado, let's rewind. That was us going back to October 2024. Yes, where we left off as well. We haven't gotten very far, have we? That's because at this time, it's almost like time condensed. Like there was so much going on at this kind of critical moment in my mind. I was so overwhelmed by the possibilities which could bring me one direction, which was to open my mind and my heart and make me expansive and huge and empowered and finally become the person that I've always wanted to become, or fail and go back to feeling trapped, go back to feeling contained and shackled and despondent and despairing and depressive and like I can never quite break through, and something is keeping me tethered to the past and stuck in the present moment. That's how it felt. So, no pressure this time. But here I was. I'll remind you what I was doing. I was flirting with writing a novel and seeing if maybe my writer's hat was the hat for me. Maybe purpose, I could find it by going back to being a writer. And maybe the fact that I was scared of going back to the writing, maybe there was a reason for that. Maybe that's because that was the thing that I needed to be doing. Not that it was sunk cost fallacy and I had put all this time and effort into it, and maybe it was the wrong thing, but maybe it was the right thing. I don't know. I needed to explore this. And I was doing the artist way, which is a 12-step program recovery for blocked artists, but I think everyone should do it. I think it's for anyone who feels blocked in their life. It applies, by Julia Cameron. And I was doing this 12-step program with a group of similarly minded, interested, curious people. We were meeting every Sunday, and that was giving me this element of protection. It was giving me this element of like camaraderie and accountability, and it was helping me to keep on showing up to writing, keep on showing up every single day and be open and curious and hopeful. And it was giving me a sense of possibility for the future. But the problem was that it was quickly coming to an end. We were nearing the last few weeks of the Artist's Way, and I was dreading it. I was dreading it leaving me, leaving my side, letting go of my hand, and me being left by myself out there in the field, scared of what was to come and the overwhelm that could potentially happen. And I was scared of not having a guide to help me filter through all the feelings and the thoughts and the experience. But I was also just putting my faith in myself that I'd have the courage and I'd have the strength to keep going and be open and just see what happens and have that courage to continue to step out into the breach, as it were. But then also half term was quickly approaching as well. And for those of you who don't live in the UK, half term is when the kids are at school. Every 5 to 7 weeks, basically, they have a break of a week or 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks for those in private school. And it's crazy because every single time it kind of comes as a surprise. You hunker down and you do your work and you're surviving each day and you are navigating all the demands, the work, the job, the invisible house elf work, the children who are constantly demanding and needing things, and the emotions that are swirling around your head, and you're navigating that, but you're getting by and you get into this rhythm and things are going well. And then all of a sudden, school breaks up for a whole week or 2 weeks and you've got the kids full time. And how do you do that? How do you do that and have a job at the same time? And for me, because my husband works full-time and commutes, it has always seemed obvious that my work being more flexible, I'm the one that needs to take on the load of taking care of the kids. But at this point, it felt like a huge barrier to me progressing. It felt like I'm going to stall. I'm going to stall, and all the momentum that I've been building up, I'm going to lose it. And I'm not going to be able to get going again on the other side. This was my fear. And if the Artist's Way is ending as well, what am I going to do? Ooh, and here came the half term. Also at this time, I was having a lot of pain. I was having a lot of pain in my back and around into my groin as well. And pain that was radiating down my arm, up my neck, and down my leg as well, which was disturbing me quite a lot. And I was trying to be cool about it. I've had a lot of pain through my life. But now, because I'd been diagnosed with cancer, my mind immediately goes to the worst case scenario. I don't need WebMD to tell me I'm going to die of cancer anymore. My brain will tell me that very quickly as oh no, we've diagnosed you already and you've got cancer someplace else. So that was niggling at me. Also, I think I told you about this. My friend Claire, one day, when I was coming down the path after picking up the kids, and she was waiting at the end of the lane, waiting for me, and I could see it written all over her face, and I knew exactly what had happened. She was white as a sheet, and she just looked like she was trembling. And sure enough, she had been diagnosed with breast cancer as well, and she was coming to me as the one person that she knew who had just been recently through it. Oh, it brought up everything for me. And I wanted to protect her and I wanted to be there for her. And I wanted her to know that it was going to be okay. But also I just knew that what do you say? What do you say to somebody when they've been thrown directly into this mire, into this abyss of the most scary thing, the thing that you never want to hear someone say to you? So that was coming up. And around this time at the end of October, she was going to have her surgery. And it was going to be a mastectomy. And so that was all coming up again. All these things which I was moving away from thinking about. I had come out the other end and I had been cleared of cancer over the summer. And my future was ahead of me and I was trying to rebuild it. But these fears kept coming up, and this anxiety and fear also that I was just going to go back. I was going to get pulled back to the way things were when I was a nervous wreck, before I had had my rock bottom moment when I went into Charlie's study and stamped my foot and said that things must change. Before that, I was just a nervous wreck, and I was at the mercy of all these emotions inside of me that were so angry, that were so resentful, that were so forlorn and desperate. And now I had gotten a taste of what it felt like to have hope, to have a little bit of peace, to feel a bit of safety. And I didn't want to lose that. And here was half term coming. And the other problem with half term is that for those of you who have experienced summer holidays and half term, all of a sudden you've got the kids home and it's expensive. It's expensive. It's expensive to get childcare, but guess what? If you keep the kids home for the day, it's also expensive because they want to do things and you want to do things with them. Otherwise, you guys are all stuck at home and you need to buy crafting materials. And you need to buy snacks. You need to take them for an ice cream. And, the price tag to life has just gone up, hasn't it? But our paychecks have not. And the other thing that happens when it's half term is that all of my clients disappear. I can't work anyway because I've got the kids. But even if I could, all my clients disappear. But the main thing is I have no income for a week. And for some reason, I can never plan for this. It always comes as a punch in the gut, especially when it happens at the end of a month when your credit card bills come in and the payments are going to go out and you don't have enough money to cover it. Which brought up another thing. The thing that is toxic to me, that keeps on coming up and came up in the Artist Way. There was a whole week in the Artist Way where we talk about money mindset and your attitude towards money. And is it a poisonous relationship that you have, or are you okay with money? And what is your history with money, and what is your family relationship with money? How have you learned this relationship with money? Is it because of how your parents dealt with money? And for me, it's a whole other gigantic Pandora's box. Something I have thought I need a whole other podcast. My plan has always been that I'm going to have this little other mini pod all about money mindset because it's something that I really want to focus on and get to grips with. But I also recognize that it would take a lot of my time and my attention to do this, not just the podcast, but actually me figuring out how to change my mindset about money and become better at it. And I had bigger fish to fry at first. I needed to become psychologically safe and capable first, I felt. It felt like it was pushing and pulling on me, and this has been the case my whole life. Like I tried to right the ship and do the physical work, exercise, take care of myself, have the right diet, and take care of myself emotionally and grow, and then the career stuff. And then the money stuff always seems to trip me up and hold me back. And I know I need to deal with it. Also around this time, I had a little Reiki session. I keep on meaning to tell you about this. This goes hand in hand with our balance and our pulling between the East and the West, the science and the granola. I like both. I like both in my breakfast. Thank you very much. And Reiki, is it granola or is it scientifically backed? There is science backing up Reiki. Reiki is kind of this, they call them Reiki healers. They're energy healers, and they're supposed to be able to manipulate your energy field, whatever that means. It feels very kind of woo-woo and mystical, and so we dismiss it. But absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Do you get what I mean? Do you know what I'm saying? So absence of evidence, not having evidence of something, does not mean that is evidence of absence, that thing doesn't work, right? And the problem with a lot of the Eastern kind of more mystic ideas is that they just haven't been studied sufficiently by science. But Reiki has actually been scientifically studied, and they have proven that it helps reduce stress. It helps to regulate your nervous system, and it has proven benefits for therapy. So it is a recommended complementary therapy. It's not going to replace chemo or anything like that, but it will help with your cancer treatment. It will help with recovery from injuries, all these things, by helping to regulate your parasympathetic nervous system. Remember our ragdoll, if you listen to the sleep science, that wants to help you to rest and digest and heal and restore your energy and help to get you to sleep at night. That system that balances against your sympathetic nervous system, which is your Tony the Tiger, let's go out there and fight and seize the day and go run a mile, that guy. It's helping to balance against that. And that's what Reiki is doing, scientifically proven. But there's also this mystic part of it that's magical, where somebody puts their hands over you, not on you, and they move your energy around and they sense where you're blocked and where you're flowing. I don't know enough to talk about it, but that's the gist of my understanding. And I have two friends who are Reikis, and one of them did a treatment on me after my first surgery. She volunteered to give me a free session, which was lovely. And definitely I came out of it feeling super relaxed and dozy and lovely. And then my other friend, Boom, got in touch with me because she is a Reiki master of 2 schools of Reiki. She's also a black belt in karate, which I just think is so super cool, but also makes me feel like she's definitely in touch with energy and how to manipulate it in space, and she can feel things. And I get the sense that she's just connected a little bit more with the mystic and the spiritual, and as in spirits and things like that, believe in it or not. And, I'm just open. I'm open-minded. So she came and she did a few sessions on me in order to build her confidence again, because she had been in the corporate world and she was going to step away from that and refocus herself back on Reiki and try to do that full time. But she hadn't been doing it for a while, so she wanted a guinea pig, and I volunteered. And how interesting for her to do energy work on someone who's been through a traumatic experience. I imagine it must feel, if she's going to feel energy, that's where it's going to be. And it had been really interesting. The first time she did it on me was right after my mastectomy, and she had held her hands hovering over my head and then down my body, just hovering. And I could feel kind of, maybe more so, I could see behind my eyes things happening. You know how when you close your eyes, you can see colors. And sometimes it's just a tranquil sea of light. And you're just like, it's just the light shining through my eyes, my eyelids. That's what it is. But when she was doing this, the light, the colors were changing. It was like watching a movie of light and psychedelic kind of experience. The light was shifting, the colors were shifting and changing and morphing, and it was really active. And I wondered, what the heck is that and what's going on? It was hard to keep my eyelids closed. They were fluttering, and I just felt activated, I guess, energetically. And so around this time in late October, she was doing another session on me. And what she'd also done in these sessions is take out a crystal and hold it over my body, dangling from a string. Yes, I know. Some of you are like, okay, this is where I draw the line. And this is where I was a bit like, this is, maybe I don't believe in this. I don't know, but maybe I should. I'm going to stay open. And she dangles the crystal over your chakras, which are in yoga, these points of energy down the center of the body. And they represent where energy radiates from, I guess, and flows through. I don't know enough to explain it, but you've probably heard of chakras. And each chakra is associated with a different kind of physical, emotional, spiritual thing, such as your root chakra symbolizes how grounded you are, whereas your crown chakra symbolizes how connected to the spiritual and the kind of and purpose and bigger meaning of things you are. And your third eye is insight, and your throat is truth and expression, and so on. And you want your chakras to be flowing. You want energy to flow through your body, and you don't want it to be blocked. But the thing that happens is we get blocked in certain chakras. And dangling this crystal, it would swing in a circle. And if that circle was very small, it meant that that chakra was closed off. And if it's large, that chakra is open and energy is moving. So this time when she did it, which is late October, it was very interesting. I'll just give you the rundown on my stats. What I remember is basically I was very grounded. My root chakra was working well, and all the other chakras were doing pretty well. I had a large creative flowing chakra, which felt good because I was writing my novel and I wanted to be creative. And the heart chakra was all right. What does the heart chakra mean? The heart chakra is like compassion and connection. And but then she got up to my throat chakra, and it was really small and really close. And I'll remind you, your throat chakra is your connection to truth and expression. So I imagine expressing your truth. And then when she got up to my third eye chakra, though, it was big. It was vast. And your third eye chakra is intuition and insight. And it was big. And then she got up to my crown chakra, and it was really big. And that's your connection to spiritual purpose and higher consciousness. So that was exciting to me to hear about, because it correlated with how I was feeling about this journey. Like, I was open. I wanted change so badly, and I wanted to suck up all the information in the universe and digest it and manifest it into something. And I felt this way. I felt like my head was huge and vast and spiraling out, and I was throwing all these nets out and trying to trawl back wonderful information. And I think I've said this, I never felt like I was spiritual, in that I wasn't religious, but all of a sudden I was getting this feeling that, I am spiritual and I want to become more spiritual. There's this whole part of me that's been kind of blocked off, maybe because I've been critical of it or too logical in my thinking, but actually there's this whole other plane of existence and understanding how I fit into the universe and the world, and that will make me bigger, will make me a bigger person and free me. And I wanted that, but my throat was closed. My throat chakra was small and held and contained, and I could feel it. I could feel that as well. And then half term was here. Half term was on the horizon, and I was terrified of that. And I knew I needed to talk to Charlie about this. I knew I needed to talk to Charlie, but this was the whole thing. I felt like last time I told you, I felt like I was a dog with a bone with this midlife crisis, and I didn't want anyone else. I didn't want anyone in it that was going to poke at it, potentially poke holes and deflate me. I only wanted energy. I only wanted people who were going to be supportive. And Dr. Tara Swart talks about this. She talks about how you need to be careful about your friends and careful about the people who are influencing you, because we are basically the sum of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And she does this thing called the family tree, where you write down the people that you are closest to, and you characterize their personalities and their energy, and you're looking for, like, what are their positive qualities and what are their negative qualities. And then you look at yourself and you kind of see, how am I overlapping with them? How am I actually taking on their personalities and they're influencing me? And if you were to take somebody out of the picture who might be negatively influencing you, and you see how the positive people are influencing you, and you lean more towards the positive people. And maybe there are some people in your life that you don't spend much time with, but you want to. You feel gravitated towards them. You respect them and you respond to them. Maybe if you hang out with them more, they are going to rub off on you more. They're going to influence you more. And she talks about how if somebody gets divorced in your circle, your chances of getting a divorce go up just because the influence of that person on this friend circle. That's what happens. If you hang out with people, if you are overweight and you're hanging out with people who are mainly overweight and don't exercise, you are more likely not to, because it's part of your tribe. It's part of the way the collective is operating, and it reinforces your behavior. But if you start hanging out with people who are gym bunnies and wearing all lycra and who are prioritizing going out running, you probably will start imitating and being influenced by that behavior as well. And you'll start becoming more like that. Does that make sense? And I was thinking about this, and I told you that, which really bothered me, that my husband I was scared of. I was scared of talking to him about any of this stuff because he is critically minded and he's not as open to maybe this Reiki and spiritual stuff and being open with your crown chakra as I was at this time, but also because I was scared that maybe he'd be right. He's a really smart person. He's very logical and very intelligent. And also I knew that he was going to see how, or I was afraid that he was going to see how my behavior might be negatively affecting our unit and our family, and how I'm not bringing in enough money. And I am maybe going off on tangents, and I'm starting to become selfish. And I was afraid he was going to pull me back towards being that virtue trap masochist. And I knew that was wrong as well. I knew that that's me projecting potentially as well. Am I sure that that's how he's going to be thinking or how he's going to be responding? No, but I didn't want to wait around to find out. But I also knew that this whole thing was about me becoming braver. And now that I had this little Reiki insight, and she was saying my throat is cut off, is held, I wanted to start pushing against that. I wanted to test that boundary. So I went to have a conversation with Charlie and it was supposed to be about the money thing. And just being straight out, like, this is all the stuff that I've been paying for, and the fact that I know I'm really bad with money and keeping track of it. But the main thing is I don't have enough money to pay for these things, and I'm not making enough money to pay for these things. And he looked open at first when I came to him, just like the day that I came into his room and stamped my foot. He looked at me in this, yeah, okay, we're going to have a conversation kind of way. And like he's going to be calm about it. But then he looked really irritated. The look on his face was really irritated. And he listened to me as I kind of garbled through it, and I tripped over my words, and I wasn't able to express myself with conviction. And I wasn't able to express myself with courage, and I could tell that I was coming out feeling weak and wrong. That was how I was projecting myself. And then I just knew, I felt like he's going to come down on me like a ton of bricks, and he's going to chastise me for being so bad with money, and he's going to be angry with me, and I just need to retreat. And he just looked at me and he said, "You have an income problem." And when he said that, I felt like I was going to explode. I was going to explode partially because I knew that I'd messed up this transaction, this conversation, by coming into it and projecting myself as weak and unsure, when actually I was very sure. And I'd been thinking about this tons, and I'd been ruminating on it, and I'd been agonizing over it, but I couldn't express myself. And then I was angry because I felt like he was saying, basically, you need to sort your shish kebabs, and you need to bring in money, and that's your responsibility, which basically meant I needed to go back to Pilates and lean back into Pilates and go back to Pilates and double down on it. And because that's the thing that I make money with, that I know that I can make and set up. I've got the studio, I've got clients, and I need to reinvest all my resources into that, which then meant I wouldn't have time to write, which meant that I needed to turn my back on writing, which meant I had to turn my back on purpose, on hope of having a future that I build for myself that seems to fit more with my heart soul chime, that deep inside intuition that tells me that I'm doing the right thing for myself, for my sanity, for my curiosity. All of that seemed to be what he was saying by saying I had an income problem. And in that moment, I closed off and I pursed my lips and I turned around and I walked out the door and I was seething. And I was seething, but I closed off the conversation. I wasn't going to talk about it anymore. And I knew it was the wrong thing to do, but I needed to go back and regroup my troops and figure out how I had done this wrong. Which again, already I know I'm thinking about this wrong. Already I'm making this a confrontation. I'm making this a war, an antagonistic event. And I'm making us warring factions, and this isn't fair, and it's not fair on him. But why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep doing this? Why can't I talk? Why can't I speak my truth? This is what I wanted to know. And it kept bringing me back to this idea that I had heard Dr. K talk about. And if you'll remember, Dr. K is one of my psychopomp extraordinaires. And I'll remind you, Dr. K is Dr. Alok Kanojia, who's a Harvard-trained psychiatrist. He says, just call me Dr. K. And Dr. K went to become a monk and then figured out he needed to become a psychiatrist. And then he became a Harvard-trained psychiatrist. But he's really interested in, I don't know, he's very forward-thinking about how psychiatry does it wrong sometimes and how to mix it with Eastern ideas and what we can learn from yoga and from Eastern practices, meditation and how it works. But then he's really super interested in the science that backs all this up. And it's interesting because I was in doing this podcast on Monday, as I was preparing, I opened up my Apple podcast folder. And guess what? There's a new episode of the Andrew Huberman Lab podcast, and it's with Dr. K. Dr. K. He's talking to Dr. K, and it's like a 3-hour-long episode. And I was just like, oh, I want to listen to that. I want to listen to it so bad. But I've been preparing this episode, talking about Dr. K for about 2 months. And I was like, no, don't get distracted by new material. This could be bad. You're going to get sucked in, and then it's going to take you another 2 months. You're going to want to integrate the material that you're learning. So I haven't. I have listened a little bit to it, just in little bits, because I was like, maybe there'll be some little kernels of information that enrich the things that I'm going to talk about today, maybe, or maybe you're just going to get really confused by it. We'll see. So that happened on Monday, which just kept me remembering the universe is pointing me towards Dr. K. Another thing that happened on Monday, as I was driving up the lane towards my house, was there were 2 monks walking along the side of the road, Buddhist monks. And we live somewhat close to a Buddhist monastery. They still were walking quite far away, but you often see monks walking around here or standing outside the village shop with their begging bowls. And they're wearing these lovely saffron mustard-colored robe saris and their shaved heads. And I always think, I wonder what they know and what they're learning and where they've come from and what's their past and who were they before previously and what has brought them to this point where they have committed themselves to this life as a Buddhist monk and to poverty. And I always think about Dr. K and how he spent 7 years studying to become a Buddhist monk, and it revealed to him his need, that he needed to go back. He needed to go back to medical school and he needed to become a psychiatrist because he wanted to know what made people tick and why people do the things they do. And that's what set him on his course. He listened to his heart soul chime. He took 7 years listening to his heart soul chime, and he figured out what his need was. And this is something, I'm going to give away something to you. In storytelling, in screenwriting, we think a lot about a character's wants versus their needs. We want a lot of things. But they're usually distractions. And often they're materialistic. They're external. But the thing is, what actually is driving a character is something they need to achieve, that they need to get. They need to fix something internally. And if a character achieves their need by the end of a story, it's a success, and the story has a happy ending. If a character doesn't, if a character gets what they want, but not what they need, then that's a tragedy. It doesn't end well for the character. So I've thought a lot about wants and needs, and we think about this in acting as well. We talk about, this is a stereotype of actors. What's my motivation? What's my motivation in this scene? Can you tell me? You ask the director when you haven't done your homework as an actor. And the motivation is we all want something. We all feel driven to achieve these things, to get things. But can you tell the difference between whether it's a want or a need that you're trying to get? And at this point, I was desperate. I felt like I was constantly being distracted by wants, which is hard. This is human nature. The wants are powerful drivers, and we think they're going to fix us. We think they're the solution. But the need is usually something deeper down that's scary, that's difficult, that takes slaying some dragons to get to. And I knew at this point that I needed to be brave enough to figure out what I needed and to find what I needed. And if I don't, I'm going to fail this midlife crisis and I'm going to be doomed to repeat it again. That was my feeling. And I felt like it's why I had a quarter life crisis. And I think I didn't do the work. I didn't figure out what I needed then. And then I kept going. And then I had another third life crisis. I had a third life crisis. And I was again faced with this moment of abyss, feeling desperate and trapped. And I did a bunch of stuff to try and fix that. But again, I don't think I figured out what I needed. I didn't do the work that I needed to do. And here I am in midlife, again, facing the same situation. But now it's much heavier because I've had breast cancer. And once you get a diagnosis of cancer, all of a sudden you realize how much is at stake. Because what if I hadn't caught it at the time that I caught it? I was so extremely lucky and I'm so extremely grateful. And when my friend Claire was diagnosed and I met my friend Jane, who has breast cancer, and all these people are having a harder time than I had in that they're on drugs and they've had chemo and radiation and mastectomies and all this stuff. And, and my friend Amy, who's had it worst of all. I have gotten off so light, but the terror that you figure out in midlife once this stuff happens is it's just that confirmation that life could end and your mortality is real. You feel this like you can survive anything until this midlife thing happens, and all of a sudden you're in this turmoil where life is so overwhelming. You've got a mortgage, you've got kids to take care of. Your time is no longer your own. You've got to make money and you've got to fulfill all of these duties, and there's no time to take care of yourself. And then because you're not taking care of yourself, your health goes off the cliff and you could potentially die. All because you were not able to juggle it all and prioritize correctly. And that's hard because you feel if you prioritize yourself over these other things that you're being selfish, but you're not. You're being selfish not to do this work is what I constantly have to remind myself. And I'm going to remind you as well. And you'll hear it ad nauseum. Put that oxygen mask on yourself first. But it still feels guilt-inducing until you start doing the work. And then once you start doing the work and you start prioritizing correctly and you start feeling the power of it and you start feeling how strong and how much more motivation you have and how much more energy you have and how much focus, how much more happiness you accrue from doing this, then you start to understand how it pays back in dividends. And you then get to radiate this energy and this happiness outwards to those around you, and you will be more effective. You will be more efficient. You will be more able to take care of those you love and to give them love and to give them your attention, your time, and you will be happy in the process. That's where I'm going. And I can feel that now. I can feel the force of it. But at this point, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I felt like my life was over. I could see how I could possibly die at this point, and this could be the end of the road. And that made me absolutely terrified and absolutely irate that I have not had the courage to stand up for myself and to make my life the life that I know it could be. But what is holding me back? What is keeping me back? There's something holding me back, and I keep on not dealing with it. This need, I need to figure out what my need is. And Dr. K, so I remembered at this point, half term 2024, end of October, after having this conversation with Charlie and just feeling so angry, I remembered first a conversation that Dr. K had with Stephen Bartlett in his interview from earlier in that year on Diary of a CEO, where he talked about anger and how you shouldn't ignore it. Anger is a message. Anger is a signal from inside of us, telling us to act, to respond. It's like fear. When a tiger jumps out at you, when a saber-toothed tiger jumps out of the bushes, that fear, that adrenaline inside of you is a signal to run, to move, to act, yes? And anger is the same thing. Dr. K says negative emotions are our most powerful drivers. They are the things that motivate us most. So if you don't listen to it, if you dampen it, if you ignore it, it's going to keep coming up. There's a reason you're angry. You have to cut to the bottom of why are you angry? Listen to the emotion and use it as a guide. Figure out what it's telling you, what it's symbolizing. What are you angry about? That is the change you need to make. You need to figure out how to fix that thing, right? So around this time when I was angry about the money, and I was angry about not being able to talk to Charlie and angry about our relationship, I realized there's something intrinsically wrong here that I have to fix. I have to get to the root of why I'm angry, and I've got to fix that. And I've got to get perspective on it. And then another thing he's talked about with Stephen Bartlett was about venting. Stephen brought up this right after the anger thing. He was like, so someone the other day was saying that venting is bad. Is that true? And Dr. K said that, yes. He said venting can be bad. And the reason venting is bad is because you are taking the pressure of anger and you are dissipating it. It's like a pressure valve. When you vent, you open the pressure valve and the anger pressure is released and the signal dissipates. You're not getting that motivation to change, to act, right? And that can be bad because the source of that anger hasn't gone away. You haven't dealt with that. And so it's going to keep coming back. So this also brought me back to, what am I not dealing with? What do I keep on repressing or venting about and not dealing with? And of course, all of these things that are the things that you really need to handle and deal with are the scariest bits of your life, are the things that you kind of keep away from you in the back of your mind in max security prison. It's like the biggest, scariest monsters are the ones that you need to unpack and release, yes, and look at in the eyes and have the courage to stare down. And in that episode with Stephen Bartlett, he talked about something else, which I had flagged when I first listened to it as like, this is something big. My inner heart soul chime had clanged in this heavy, deep kind of way, being like, ooh, this could be the key. This could be the key. He talked about a quarter life crisis and how you can do it successfully or you can fail at it. And the thing is that there are certain steps you have to go through and you have to do them in the right order in order to be successful at your quarter life crisis, which, just like I've just explained to you, brought up this whole in my head, did I fail my quarter life crisis? And is that why I'm here now with a midlife crisis? Because I failed my quarter life crisis, I had a third life crisis and I failed that one. And now I'm at my midlife crisis. So what are these steps that he's suggesting, that he says we have to go through, and what is the order? Let's unpack it right now, because I think you need to know. And maybe if you've had any of these crises, or you have a brewing crisis coming ahead of you, this could be helpful for you or anyone you know who might need this. And let's think about it together. Let's unpack it together, because like I said, it's taken me 1.5 years, but it's led me to something else, which is even bigger, which I think fits into this. So the first step in a quarter life crisis, he says, is that you feel trapped. Your life leading up to your quarter life crisis has been your formative years when you were a child and a teenager, and you kind of latched on to an idea at some point of what your career, your job should be, the thing that you go and you aspire to and you get to. And that could be solely because of what you've come up with as a child, or probably you were influenced by your parents or lack of parenting, and the influence of your teachers. And he says, your life up to here, you've been kind of forming your personality, your identity, according to external forces. You've been trying to make your parents proud. You've been trying to show the world what you're worth, and you've compared yourself to all these other people, and you've performed for your teachers, and you've always been trying to make other people happy. You've created your life according to what other people need from you or want from you. Yes? And you've had a lot of experiences that have formed you that were not purposeful. You didn't do them on purpose. You were just responding to your environment, right? So you have all these things kind of pushing you. And then you get to this point where maybe you've achieved the goal that you thought was the thing that you wanted, right? That you needed to have happen. But all of a sudden you feel trapped. You feel like, this isn't actually who I am. I'm unhappy in this life. This is not the life that fits me. So that's your quarter life crisis. You feel trapped in this life that you've created, but it isn't actually what you want. It isn't actually what you need. And so what then you have to do is you start checking out. You start checking out of your life. That's the second stage. You back away. You're kind of going through the motions, but you disengage with it. You're not excited by it. And he said, this has to happen. You have to kind of numb yourself and start to draw away from it. The third step is that you physically separate yourself. You create distance between yourself and this life that you have had. So you might go off to India to become a monk, or you might go off on an extended holiday, or, you quit your job and you go do something else for a little while. And you need that step to happen. You need to make distance in order not to go back. So he says the thing that happens here is that people feel guilty around this stage. And so they try to re-engage with their life. They think, oh, I can fix it. I'll just mix it up. I'll switch a couple things around. I just have to go back to it and come back to it with a different outlook. And it will be fine. So then they go back to their life and they're stuck there again, or they're just trying to shift some things around. But the thing that was not right hasn't been fixed. So that's why you have to make distance. You have to make a clean break, and you really have to move away from it. The next step is most important, is that you then get in touch with yourself internally, and you get to know what is your internal environment. What do you really need? What do you want? Who are you? What makes you tick? What makes you happy? Then once you've gotten in touch with all those stuff and you understand your motivations and your drivers and all these internal things, then you create a new reality based on that internal world. So now you're creating your reality that is based on you and your wants and your desires and your needs and your curiosity and your personality. And that's the new world. It is no longer created because your parents wanted you to do this thing and your teachers told you were good at this thing and you should do this thing, and some test told you that you should do this, and you got into this school and you just kept going down this path because other people were telling you this is the right way to go. No, now you create a reality that's based on yourself and what's happening inside of you and who you are specifically. So those are the steps for a successful quarter life crisis. So the first one is you feel trapped. Second one is you start to check out and numb yourself. And the third one is you distance yourself, really distance yourself from your life. You make a break from it and you don't go back. You go someplace else. And then you spend a period of time getting in touch with yourself and understanding what's inside of you and who you are. And then you craft a new reality based on that information that you've gleaned about who you are personally. So this makes sense on paper. And I like that he's made this like a clear step roadmap-y thing, right? Here's your manual. Look at diagram 553B, and this is what you have to do at this step if you all of a sudden feel trapped in your life and you need to change. So looking at that, I was like, okay, so how does this fit into my life? And did I fail my quarter life crisis? And so I looked back and I was like, okay, I felt trapped. I won't give you all the details of my quarter life crisis, but I felt trapped. I realized that I was living a shadow life. I didn't really know what I was doing. Everything I had done to that point, I didn't know what direction I should take because I realized I was not being true to myself up to that point. But I had no one to guide me, and I actually had no outside influence of people telling me what to do. My parents weren't invested in talking about what I should be doing or where I'm going. I had no mentors. And I realize now that it's because I wasn't being true to myself, and I don't think anyone was very interested in me because I was hiding. I was hiding. I didn't want anyone to look at me because I was ashamed of myself. I was ashamed of myself because I wasn't being the person who I knew I was or could be. And I had gone through an eating disorder. I had anorexia, I had bulimia. I had all these things that had made me into a shadow of myself, had made me into this fractured, frail, scared girl who was in denial about what I wanted. I was also very sick at the time. I had horrible IBS. I didn't realize at the time, but I had ME, and that was keeping me shackled. I had no energy. I was ill all the time. I felt like an injured wildebeest, and the rest of the herd was going off without me and leaving me to get eaten by the lions. I felt like, well, who would want to invest any time or effort into me? So I'm just gonna become an invisible wallflower, and that's what I had become. Long story short. So I felt trapped in my life because I wasn't being true to myself, and I wasn't living the life I wanted. So I looked inside of myself and I said, what is the thing you're most scared of, and what is the thing you've always felt most at home, and this is the person you are. And it was acting, and it had always been acting. Since I was 3 years old, I'd wanted to be an actor. I always felt happiest when I was in a play, and it just felt like, no, you need to face your fears, and you need to do the thing that you're scared of the most, scared of failing at, and do that thing. So that's why I then got a job as a waiter because that's what actors do. I got some headshots, and I got myself into some acting classes at the Atlantic School of Acting, which is David Mamet's School of Acting. I got into a method acting class, which was not me, Tony Greco, but it was very interesting. And I started experimenting with all that stuff, and I applied to get into drama school, and I got into a drama school in another country, in the UK, to LAMDA, London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art, and I was flying off to London to become an actor, to become the thing that I felt deep down was who I was and I was most scared of. So how did I do? I felt trapped. I was checked out for sure. And then I got distance. But I got distance by jumping on a plane and committing to an education to become an actor. So I had already kind of committed to a new life, and I did not spend any time getting in touch with myself. I did a bit, figuring out that I'm an actor and this is the thing I'm most scared of, but I don't think I really understood the life of an actor, the lifestyle of an actor, and I did not understand how it might not be the right life and career for me. Anyway, so that, yeah. So I think I failed at that hurdle. I didn't get in touch with myself internally enough. And then I went on to my third life crisis, and similarly, I felt trapped because I was an actor, and the career of an actor was absolutely toxic and poisonous for me and my demons and everything that I was going through. And especially, I still had ME, I still had IBS, and I had no health insurance because I was a starving actor, so I couldn't get help for any of these things, and no one would diagnose me, and I just felt like a pathetic loser all the time. Here's a little insight into my head. And I definitely started checking out of that after 10 years of trying to be an actor. And I think I had checked out for quite a while, actually, thinking, this isn't me. I don't want to jump through hoops. I don't want to do my hair and put on tons of makeup and buy all these clothes that I hate and get these headshots that don't look like me. And the problem was I wasn't being myself, but I didn't feel like the acting world would accept me for who I was either. But I also felt like it wasn't a match fit. It wasn't quite right. It was in some respects, but the business of acting was not for me, was not suiting me. So I checked out, and then I got space. Did I get space before I made a choice? No, I didn't. I just decided, you know what? I've been writing. I've been getting a lot of encouragement to become a writer, and maybe, it makes sense. I'm just going to do this. And so I applied for a master's in another country, got in it. And so, yes, I did make distance. I got lots of distance from being an actor. And I went and moved to the UK again in order to get a master's as a screenwriter. So again, I skipped over the part of getting in touch with myself internally. I got distance. I checked out. I got distance, but I just committed into a whole new reality that wasn't completely based on my internal world. So now we get to my midlife crisis. How is my midlife crisis stacking up against this framework? Because now that I'm here, if I repeat the same pattern, am I gonna fail it again? Let's see. I feel trapped. I felt trapped. Definitely felt trapped. I checked out. I did. I was just going through the paces. I was filling out the forms. I was being the roles, the virtue trap masochist that I needed to be, and I was angry and seething. And then you get distance. Oh, well, I didn't really get distance, but perhaps that's what I was creating with this break. Perhaps when I had my little storm into Charlie's office and stamp my foot bottom out moment, perhaps that was me getting space and distance. And perhaps that's why I was so excited and happy and grateful in some ways that I had breast cancer, and breast cancer was telling me that I was going to have to stay in bed and repair and recover for 3 months. And so I would have to stop teaching Pilates. I would have to take a break from teaching Pilates. I think that's the distance, was I need to move away from the things that I felt were keeping me trapped, and the fact that I had to put so much time and effort into Pilates when actually I wanted to develop a different career and I wanted to get back to the creative stuff, then that gave me the distance that I needed. Perhaps that qualifies as distance, but when you're midlife, how do you get distance from your life without creating a complete rupture? You can't go off and get away from the kids and go off to Thailand or Bali. Wouldn't that be nice? No, you can't do that. So you can't get distance from your personal life in so many regards. But maybe this is why people end up getting a divorce when they have a midlife crisis, because they feel like they can't get perspective and they need to just completely sever and separate themselves and get distance from the life that they felt trapped in. But then I think the problem is with that is it's a bit cart before the horse, isn't it? it's a chicken before the egg situation, but it's cart before the horse. No, it's cart before the horse, because really what you have to do is get in touch with yourself internally and figure out what is making you feel trapped. What is the anger coming from? What are the messages from your emotions? And it reminds me of the sleep science. You have your REM sleep. Your rapid eye movement sleep is when you have your dreams and your brain is processing all of your emotional memories from the day before. And your emotions are there to signal to your brain that there's something to learn in this moment. This is why we have emotions. Emotions are important signals because it signifies something big that we need to grasp onto, a learning moment, something that's going to teach us something. So when you go to sleep, your brain takes the emotional memories from the day before and it processes them, and it takes the emotion part and it takes it out of the memory. It detoxifies it. It decouples the emotion from the learning. And then it takes the learning, the thing that you need to learn, and it processes it and integrates it into your semantic network, into your mind palace, so that then you can create wisdom based on this learning. So that's what emotion is there for. Emotion is a signal to tell you this is formative. This is something really important. So if you went down to the mango trees and there were tigers there and you got the bejesus scared out of you because a tiger jumped out and you ran like the dickens, you are going to remember that. That was a bit traumatizing. You have a lot of emotion coupled with that, but it's teaching you not to go to the mango trees or go down there very cautiously because there could be tigers, right? It's teaching you how to survive your life. That's what emotions are. So we need to get in touch with the drivers, with the things that are creating, signaling these emotions to occur, right? That is the need. That's what you need to do in order to change, in order to create your future. So, but then how do you do that? So then another thing came up from Dr. K. And I think the reason why I've had such a hard time making heads nor tails and putting this episode together for you is that in that episode of Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, it was out of order. So I didn't quite put them together, which was stupid in hindsight. But it kept on kind of messing me up because I'd go back to just listen to one section and I didn't listen to the whole thing. But really, I needed to go back and learn this other thing and remember this other thing. He talked about trauma. It's kind of interesting because, a little aside, Dr. K, I didn't just listen to him with this episode of Diary of a CEO. I've been stalking him. Not really stalking him. I've been following him around the pod sphere. And whenever he comes up on quite frequently on some podcasts that I really like listening to, like Diary of a CEO, but also I think he was on Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, and now he's come up on Andrew Huberman's The Huberman Lab podcast. I kind of feel a bit like, I was telling this to my friend Amber this morning, I feel like that scene in Bridesmaids, you know, the one where they're behind the tree doing sit-ups and they're watching this guy teaching boot camp across the field, and he turns and he can see them behind the tree and he's like, hey, I know what you're doing. You got to pay for this class. I feel a bit like that's what I'm doing with Dr. K. I'm kind of following him around the internet, trying to get free therapy from him. But I digress. So this other thing that Dr. K brings up in this interview with Stephen Bartlett, I was talking about, was about trauma and how trauma affects some people. And trauma, I heard Dr. K talking about this on the Andrew Huberman podcast that I wasn't supposed to be listening to. He said that, you know, some people can develop PTSD from a situation and another person might experience that same situation and not develop PTSD. We're all individuals. We all have our own unique genetics and fingerprint, blueprint for how we respond to things. But some people, if they have trauma in their lives, have this thing called loss of the future dimension. which happens. And basically, if you've had trauma in your life, you might respond to it in this way where the part of your brain that plans your future, that makes creating a future possible or envisioning a future for yourself, actually gets shut off, gets turned off, this part of your brain. And it's because whatever this trauma is that you've been dealing with, your brain responds to it by feeling like it's under threat and it has to survive each day. So it basically channels all of the resources that it has to surviving the present moment and getting through each day. And there's no resources left to allot to that part of the brain that can manage the idea of planning for a future. And I looked this up on the interweb. I asked Mr. Google AI, because everything's AI these days. And I just said, what can you explain to me this loss of the future dimension in psychology? And he said, because obviously it's a he, AI said it's often termed a foreshortened future. It's a trauma-related symptom where individuals lose the capacity to imagine, plan for, or feel connected to a future. It is a survival-based adaptation to chronic unpredictability or trauma, causing a collapse of time into a constant present, leading to hopelessness, lack of motivation, and a feeling that life has already ended. Ugh. When I read that to you, I want to vomit. That's how my body responds to this information. And this is how it felt when I heard him talk about it on that podcast. First of all, there was a flicker of recognition, like, oh, I think that's me. And he was talking about people, Stephen Bartlett brought this up, around people who he knows that seem really great and with it, but never seem to be able to get going in life, never seem to accomplish the things that they want or be motivated enough. And Dr. K says, this is a thing can happen. He said you can think of it in a purely physiological way, and that there's catabolic state and there's an anabolic state that your body can be in. A catabolic state is when a tiger jumps out from behind the mango tree and you go into fight or flight and you tear off to survive, to run as fast as you can away from this tiger. And what happens is your body goes into this catabolic state where it starts eating itself, eating its muscle in order to create quick bursts of energy so you have enough energy to survive this occasion with this tiger, right? That's a catabolic state, when your body is eating through its resources to survive the moment. And then there's the anabolic state, which is when you are all safe and sound and you can relax and you can take the energy that you're taking on and you can store it as fat, as reserves for your future. You can build muscle to help you survive the next attack by a tiger. And that's you building a future for yourself, is when you're in an anabolic state. But people who have this trauma response called loss of the future dimension or foreshortened future cannot get into that anabolic state. They are always in this catabolic state. And when he mentioned this, and when I looked this up on Mr. AI and he talked about this stuff, AI says this phenomenon can also be seen in the context of depression and chronic severe life stress. It is not merely a cognitive deficit, but a profound shift in how time is experienced, where the future feels unsafe, non-existent, or disconnected from the present self. I mean, that's been my whole life. And I just thought I was just ashamed of myself. I just thought I was pathetic. But this goes back to how I felt in high school, and that person that I was ashamed of, that wallflower that I had to become, that when I made myself invisible, when I felt like nobody wanted to invest time or energy or care or concern into me because why would they? I'm a nobody, and I don't think I have a future for myself. There's no future for me. And everyone can see that. Nobody wants to invest in me because I have no future. That's how it felt when I was a teenager, late teenager, trying to get into university and think about a future for myself. And that's how I felt when I was in university and suffering with ME and IBS and depression. And I felt like completely lost and unmoored, and nobody was guiding me, and there was no future that I could vision. I was so confused and overwhelmed, but the bottom line was I felt like there was no future for me. I had given up on myself already. And Dr. K also mentions in this that people who have trauma often respond by trying to become invisible, by making themselves small. And I certainly did that. There's so many occasions in my life when I've done that, and I hated it. And I hated it so much, and I didn't want that for myself. And something deep inside of me was fighting against it and telling myself to prove myself wrong, to prove the world wrong, to show that I'm bigger, that I can become something fantastic, that I have potential, that I have a future. And doing this podcast, this episode of the podcast, over the last week and a half when I've been reviewing this information and printing out that little bit about loss of the future dimension from Mr. Google AI, it really struck me as I suddenly had the aha moment. I suddenly realized I had been thinking about this out of order and I hadn't really put it together. It's like a jigsaw. Life is like a jigsaw. This is why it's so hard to create change and so hard to help ourselves, because we are so overwhelmed and we have all of these emotions and we have all of these signals and we have all of these things telling us we want all these things and these are going to be the solutions. But so much of it is external and so much of it is a quick fix and so much of it is like a distraction of something that's superficial that you can fix easier. So why not do that thing? But actually it's just keeping you from spending the time and the effort on that deep internal need, that thing that you need to sort out. And what I've figured out is that what I keep avoiding and why I'm having a midlife crisis, why I failed my third life crisis, why I failed my quarter life crisis, is because I did not do the deep internal work. I did not go deep internally and give myself space and time to figure out what is broken. And the thing that's broken is this trauma piece. The thing that's keeping me from having a future, that's keeping me stuck in this foreshortened future, this loss of the future dimension, the trauma that is creating that keeps going undealt with. That's the thing I need to get to, but that's the scary bit. That's the monsters in the way back in the max security prison that I really don't want to open up those cells. But oftentimes when you do open those cells, you realize it's just a little kitten in there. But it happened so long ago, it seemed so scary because you were a kid, right? There's no monster in that closet. But you think there is, and you've made a bigger deal. That's not always the case, Some traumas are gigantic, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're not as scary if you look at them. And, you realize they don't have as much power over you as you thought, or what was the big deal? Why have you created this for yourself? But this was my big aha moment, was that, okay, I keep avoiding something. I keep avoiding something that's keeping me from having a future. And the reason I'm angry is because I'm angry at the idea of losing a future. And especially now that I have momentum and now that I've been gaining all of this, all the work that I've done this last year. We're going to talk next episode about the next thing that I've figured out, or that I'm interested in, that Dr. K talks about, which is how do you heal trauma? And he has 3 steps to do it. He's given us a roadmap. And we're going to talk about these 3 steps. And the first 2 steps are what I've been focusing on. And what I learned from listening to him way back in October of 2024 was I took away that I needed these 2 things. These 2 things were the most important. And then the next step will come and it will happen. And I have been working on these 2 things for a year and a half, and I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. the proof is in the pudding. I haven't healed my trauma. I'm still, I still have this foreshortened future feeling. I still need to figure that out, but it's lessening. I do feel like I have a future. And the thing that I find now that keeps on triggering my anger, especially whenever there's a half term, because it still happens. We had a half term a week ago, and I had the same anger come out, this feeling that I can't get ahead, that I'm always stuck, that I'm always tethered, that I'm hamstrung, and I never have a future. I'll never be able to build the future that I want. And the reason is that the half term, I have to put all of the work that I'm doing for myself aside. I can't do the podcast. I don't have much time to exercise or take care of myself, and I have to take on the full-time job of being a parent and a carer and a housekeeper and do all the invisible house elf work. And I can't have any clients because there isn't time, and I've got the kids, so I'm not making any money. And so I'm angry because it feels like my momentum is being shut down. The momentum that I am building to create a future for myself. I'm angry because the invisible house elf work takes my time and my energy away, time and energy which I desperately just want to funnel into building this future for myself. I'm angry when I can't teach my clients because that means money is being taken away, money that I desperately need for security, for safety, in order to build a future for myself. And I'm angry when I can't do the podcast because I love this and it's something I'm doing that's feeding my soul and pointing me in a direction and seems to somehow be the right thing for me to be doing. And so I'm angry because it's taking me away from this future that I so desperately want to build, because my whole life I've felt like I have no future, and now all of a sudden I feel like I could have one. And the diagnosis of breast cancer was that could have been a nail in a coffin moment, but instead it was a springboard. It was me realizing that I had to figure out how to change because I wanted a future, and I needed to fight tooth and nail for a future because it could be taken away from me at any moment. And I am mortal. And I'm in midlife, and no time like the present. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. These types of adages, strike while the iron is hot, these things kept on coming up in my brain and making me feel excited and angry. Angry when I wasn't allowed, when I was being held back. So all of a sudden I realized my throat was closed off, and I'm finally getting the strength and the courage to open my throat and to speak and express myself. And that is what I was angry about around Charlie, was that somehow I kept on getting shut off and I couldn't express myself with him. I couldn't share this stuff with him because I felt like he would be critical, but it was me projecting on him. I don't think he does think these things. I think it's some inner voice inside of me. I'm projecting my inner demons, my censor, onto him because he seems like such a wise and thoughtful and adult person. I don't know why I need his approval. And when I'm with him, especially around this time, not talking about today because things have improved, I'll let you know, but around that time, I couldn't speak my truth to him because I thought that he would come down on me like a ton of bricks, but it was me coming down on myself like a ton of bricks. It was my trauma inside of me. That's the thing I have to unravel. I have to get to the heart of that, and I have to heal that trauma, and I have to figure out how to do it. And I know it sounds cheesy, healing trauma and like my little snowflake, like just get on with it. I've spent my whole life getting on with it, and I have been adapting, and I have been strong, and I have gotten through so much stuff, and I've dealt with chronic pain and illness, and I have created a life for myself, but I could do so much more. And I have been depressed and unhappy and angry and had so much anxiety. And it all comes down to this stuff. Dr. K delightfully describes it as, you've got a drink, but it's got piss in it. and no amount of sugar that you add to that drink is going to get the piss out. Isn't that true? So how do we get the piss out? Well, next episode, we're going to put a pin in this conversation now. We're going to talk about the roadmap that he sets out for how we heal from trauma. And that was the thing that I'm like, this is what I have to do. This is what I have to do. And I've been on this road, and I'm getting to the last stage of that road, and I think it's working, but I realize there's still some more work to do. But come back next episode and let's discuss it and see if this applies to you, if this could be helpful for you, if you know anybody else who might find this beneficial, this roadmap for how to survive your quarter life crisis, your third life crisis, your midlife crisis. And is this right, how I'm interpreting it? I don't think any of it is clean cut, but I do think there's some transferable skills from what he talks about with the quarter life crisis. And I think it all comes down to the deep internal work. You cannot skip that step. Before you start creating a new reality for yourself, you have to do the deep internal work. And if you've got trauma, you better deal with that, or it's going to muck things up and you're going to have piss in your drink going forward. So let's talk about this anon. All right, guys. I do have another update because I realize I promised you a couple of the things. First of all, I just want to say that those daffodils that I was so terrified of back in February, if you listen to the last episode of the podcast, there are February daffodils, and it's not just global warming. There's actually an early variety of daffodils. So that's my first little correction that I needed to make. And then an update. I promised you I'd tell you about the results of my experiment with facial lymphatic fascia massage, which I went on with Anastasia Beauty Fascia. I learned about her through Andrew Huberman, who talked about her in his podcast episode about the lymphatic system, and the glymphatic system being the lymphatic system of your brain. And I wanted to know how to depuff my face, basically, and stave off the aging that I can see happening in my midlife, and thanks to perimenopause. And so I wanted to see if that could help. And it's always been on my bucket list to do face massage. Well, I've spent more than a half an hour every single day. I did 60 days of about 40 minutes of face massage every single day. I prioritized it because I wanted to see if it would have an effect. And I wanted to be scientific and rigorous about this experiment. And then I got to 60 days and I did my after photo and I compared it to my before photo. And the result was I could see no change whatsoever. That was my perception of the photos. But I sent the photos to Anastasia, and she got back to me saying, oh, no, don't get so hard on yourself. Like, I can see your neck is longer and your shoulders are back and you're less puffy underneath your eyes. She was very kind. And I was like, oh, really? She can see that? And I looked back and I couldn't see it. It's hard to tell. But I will say that I felt the difference. It felt really good. It was like, when your body is telling you that something is, oh, keep doing that. It was kind of like when you are stroking a cat and you stroke it in the right way and the cat responds by purring. That's how it felt in my body. My body was like, oh, yes, keep doing this. There was a lot of massaging of the scalp, which felt really good. Like when you go to the hairdresser and they massage your scalp and someone does it really well, actually gets it right. And a lot of work on the neck and the shoulders because it releases the lymphatic system that gets blocked up and creates puffiness in your face. And a lot of actually the stuff that goes on in your face that we get so annoyed about and in our jowls, which is one of my personal bugbears, is actually because our head and neck and shoulders are not aligning and there's blockages there. So if I had lots of time, if I had more time in my day, I would absolutely continue doing this. She funnels you into her subscription service, which then has videos that are condensed into 15-minute, 16-minute videos. And if I would continue doing that. But it's hard to fit that extra bit of something into your day. When you're trying to exercise, you're trying to eat well, you're trying to cook all this, food from scratch, so everyone's eating healthily, take care of the house. And I have too much on my plate already. And this is, let's be honest, a little bit more of a vanity project than everything else. But, my body was like, yes, oh, this is so good. You should have been doing this the whole time. So there's something to it. And if I can fit it in, I would love to keep going with it. So that's my review of Honest Anastasia Beauty Fascia. And I do think if you did this every single day or semi-regularly for a year, you would see results. I completely believe that you would, but it is time and effort. Yeah. All right, guys. So next episode, I'm going to try and get to it toot sweet because I'm ready and I've got the material, and we're talking about Dr. K. We're going to talk about trauma, how we heal from trauma, and we create a new identity for ourselves. And this is what I've been wanting. So yes, come back. And until then, please share this episode, or share the podcast, I should say, because anyone new, I would like to start from the beginning, but share the podcast with others who you think might benefit from our conversations here. I really love meeting with you here and talking about this stuff because it's such good stuff that I feel like we can all benefit from and grow. And as a species, we're gonna become better, stronger, and as a species, we'll just be that much better able to take care of each other and love each other, right? As RuPaul says, if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else, right? With that, sally forth with some welly and enjoy the sun if you've got it. I hope you do. Get outside, and I hope your sleep. Listen to those sleep episodes. Get your sleep, your foundation, and we're going to be back to talk about how sleep figures into healing from your trauma. All right, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.